Typically here in the detail bay, we're looking at paint, doing paint corrections, getting the paint as glossy as humanly possible. But today we've got something very different. And this is a factory matte painted Polestar 1 owned by my friend Kyle Connor, who runs the Out of Spec Studios YouTube channels. And he asked me, hey, I'm not gonna go ahead and PPF this entire car. Let's get this thing ceramic coated and protected. And I thought I'd bring you guys along with the process of actually ceramic coating matte paint. It is slightly different from coating glossy paint in areas like that, but we're gonna talk about all the intricate details, what I'm using, and the full process on how to ceramic coat matte paint. Welcome back to another out of spec detailing video here from Clear Detailing in Northern Colorado. Let's jump into it. So if you're tuning into this video, this is actually part 3 of our matte paint detailing series. So in part 1, we really talked about how do you even wash a matte or satin finished paint. Part 2, we talked about protection options, whether it's paint protection film or ceramic coating. Today, we're gonna be talking about ceramic coatings. And let me just give you a little bit of background on why Kyle is not full PPFing this. Well, I am actually not a PPF installer. I used to be a certified installer for XPEL. I've kind of since fallen out of love with paint protection film. I'm not gonna really go deep into that, but I do not install it. Really focused on paint corrections and ceramic coatings. Now, we got a few quotes from different installers around the Colorado area. It was between $8,000 to $10,000 to do XPEL Stealth on the Polestar 1 here. Now, that's quite a bit of money. It is and it isn't. Like if you're buying this car new, I think definitely just go ahead, spend the money. These things were $150,000, $155,000 new. Another $8,000 I think is really, really well worth it. Now, Kyle bought this car used, so it's already depreciated. We've already got rock chips on the front as this has been on a cannonball rally. Kyle's been driving it everywhere, just enjoying the heck out of it. We've also got a few scratches already in the paint. Now, of course, matte or satin painted vehicles, you can't polish scratches out or anything like that. So he really decided, okay, this car is already depreciated, spending another 8 to 10 grand, it just doesn't make sense. What other options do we have? And the only really other option we have is to ceramic coat it. Now, when we did the full wash video, we used a product called Geon Wet Coat. It's basically a short-term, very less aggressive ceramic coating. So it's more of a sealant, I would say, but with properties of ceramic coatings, and it has already started to degrade it. So a few things with this. Kyle takes these cars on road trips quite a bit, so you get a ton of bug splatters up front. These cars also typically live outside, so we're dealing with rain, we're dealing with a ton of tree sap. So we need something as a sacrificial layer that goes on the top of the paint and makes it a lot easier for him to actually clean up. And that's why we said, okay, let's go the ceramic coating route instead of spending all the money. Now, there are some differences when it comes to ceramic coating matte paint versus glossy paint. And really a lot of that comes into the prep of it. Now, ceramic coating the actual paint is not necessarily different. You have to use a different coating and be a little bit more intricate with how you actually coat it. Now, this is only my second matte painted vehicle that I have ever ceramic coated, so I've only got one under my belt. Sorry, Kyle, but trust me, we're gonna get this knocked out. So the vehicle that I previously worked on, gosh, it had to be 7-8 years ago now, was a brand new Audi R8 V10 Plus finished in a matte green paint, like a $12,000 paint job on this. And I was tasked with ceramic coating it. First time ever, it went pretty darn well. But 7 to 8 years ago, the technology in matte ceramic coatings, I didn't feel was necessarily there. It was really, really challenging. You have huge panels. You're trying to basically apply it in smaller sections, which is what I'm going to talk a lot about with applying the ceramic coating today. And you get these high spots everywhere. And the tricky thing with that is you can't really do anything with that. If you mess up on this, it's kind of done forever or until at least the coating wears off. But if you really screw up and leave like very, very heavy high spots, you're gonna have a nightmare on your hands. So do I think this is a DIY friendly process, or should you send it to a professional? It's kind of hard to say. Again, I haven't actually used this coating we're going to be applying to Kyle's car today, but I have a feeling it's going to be somewhat easy to do if you kind of have a good concept and patience and understanding of how to ceramic coat a vehicle. So hopefully this helps you DIY guys, and maybe even some pros alike that have seen their first matte painted vehicle. Now, we are seeing a lot more matte and satin finished vehicles in the market. BMW makes a ton of these, but consumer cars, I'm talking Hyundai and Kia with their EGMP vehicles, are offering matte paint for I think like $1,000. So a lot of people, they love the look. It looks fantastic, but maintaining it's a real pain in the butt. So imagine spending $50,000 on a car and then spending 25% of the value, maybe slightly less, and doing full matte PPF. That's a hard challenge to go ahead and do. So I think ceramic coating is going to be an option that a lot of people do. I personally don't recommend it, but you're going to see that a lot. So let's jump into this. We're going to talk a little bit about the coating, the prep process, because that's a big difference as well, and get into actually ceramic coating this. So let's talk a little bit about the coatings out there in the market. Now, I am a certified installer of Geon ceramic coatings. So if you have a gloss painted vehicle, this is typically what I recommend for all of my clients. This is Infinite Base Type 1, certified only. You cannot go out and purchase this. Now, this is a very different coating from this, and this is what we're actually going to be using today. So this is Geon Matte Evo, so specifically made for matte paint. Let's talk quickly about the differences here and understand a little bit more about what matte paint actually is. So if we think about gloss paint, it is basically this very flat, you'll have a little bit of orange peel, but essentially like this on the paint surface under a microscope. Matte paint is completely different. It's almost random. It's very jagged like this. Think of like a mountain peak versus plains for a gloss finished vehicle. Now the issue with using something like this that's made to enhance gloss in areas like that is it's going to fill in some of those valleys, if you will. So it's going to create a higher sheen on the actual vehicle. So you need something that lays very thin and very even with this particular paint. A lot of the times what you'll see, if you were to use another gloss coating like this on matte painted areas, is it's going to get splotchy because it's going to make it kind of random in certain areas. So very, very important to select something that is actually made for a matte painted vehicle. So let's talk a little bit more about this coating. So this is right around $100 for a 50 ml kit retail. Not too bad. The thing that I'm seeing with this is it lasts about 2 years. So I know Kyle said he's going to be keeping this Polestar 1 forever. So this may be something that we do more often, maybe every year, maybe every 2 years, maybe 3 years. It really depends on how you're going to use this car. Now, this particular car, Kyle does not drive every single day. Like I said, though, it does sit outside quite often. So we deal with a lot of stuff like environmental fallout and tree sap and water spots. So we'll kind of gauge and see how this coating lasts. We'll definitely keep you updated as the years come on this particular car. But this is going to be a nice coating that goes on there. It has self-cleaning properties. It has UV resistance in it, and it guards against the elements. Here in Colorado, Kyle, I know, is planning to take this out and do some winter driving with it. So all that road salt, mag chloride, salt brine, all the nastiness, really gonna help keep this matte paint looking matte. Now, the big difference with matte paint that we're talking here is really in the prep. So on a gloss vehicle that comes in, say something like a Rivian R1S that I detail a lot, we go through, do a full paint correction on the paint, getting all the scratches, swirl marks, things like that out of the paint, and really get the highest level of gloss, and then apply the ceramic coating. With this, you can't do any of that. You can't polish anything. Nothing, absolutely nothing. The only thing I did yesterday was areas like the high gloss black areas, tail lights, things like that. I taped off, polished them out, and really made it look nice. The issue with this particular car, again, like I said, it sits outside a lot. We had so much tree sap on it. Now, one of the big issues with matte paint is you cannot clay it. So we couldn't really get most of that stuff out unless you use stuff like chemicals that really got in there, ate away the tree sap. So I did as good as I can. I would say we got 90 to 95% of all the specks and nastiness that were actually on this paint. There are a few more, and unfortunately we kind of have to leave that alone. Again, this being a used vehicle, we're just trying to maintain it, make it look better, and keep this satin finish. So lots and lots of work went into that yesterday. Honestly, about 2 to 3 hours of just working with this paint. But next steps are pretty similar to using something like this. We are basically going to be using Geon Prep on here. This is an alcohol-based solution that gets rid of any sealants, any oils, typically polishing oils. If we were polishing the paint here, gonna make it basically naked paint so it can actually accept the ceramic coating and chemically bond to the actual paint here. So very similar process. Let's run through that and then we'll actually break this open and get coating the Polestar 1. So now that we understand what we've done, again, I went in, deconned this paint substantially yesterday, getting as much of the environmental issues out of the paint. There are some still remaining, but got 90 to 95% of them out. So this is the most important step, using something like this. This is Geon Prep. I use Geon just because I am a Geon certified detailer and really have fell in love with this stuff. It works amazingly, stripping all of the polishing oils, any protection left on here, anything like that off, making sure that we are actually physically bonding the ceramic coating to the actual paint. This is a step I see a lot of people miss, and this is how you get coating failures down the road and how you get very inconsistent results with ceramic coatings. Very simple process here. You're gonna take a nice soft towel here. This purple one, I color coordinate them to be used with Geon Prep here. So I use this on gloss painted vehicles. This is really the last step. Now, I will have you guys probably ask the question, can you use isopropyl alcohol? Yes, you can. You just need to make sure that it is properly diluted and not too strong. We don't want to interfere anything here, especially on the matte paint. This is not going to add gloss. If anything, this is going to take any sort of gloss out if there's a little bit of wax or oils or anything like that on here. And basically all you're going to do is liberally spray this down. You don't want to skimp on this step. Just make sure you're using enough product. You're going to work it in and basically have a wet side, flip over to your dry side here and wipe away all of that. And you'll see it does not affect the satin finish at all. What I can very much feel on here is how much tackier this area is than the other areas like this that had Geon wet coat. Very tacky, very slick. So I know that I'm actually getting every bit of protection off here. Now what I'm gonna do on this particular car to make sure we've got everything off is do one wipe down, grab another towel, come back and do it a second time, just to ensure we've got everything off of here. We have the best chance of this coating lasting for a long time. I typically do this even on gloss painted vehicles, just to ensure everything's off of there. So really be liberal with this. Don't miss any areas. Make sure you are spending the time on here. I always say this, people ask me all the time, how hard are ceramic coatings to install? And I say, well, the install is actually not bad, but it's all in the prep. It's just like painting something. If you don't prep it right, if you don't get it sanded and primed and everything like that, the paint's not gonna stick. So think of it the same exact way. If you don't get this paint properly primed, it's not going to have the coating stick and adhere to it. So I'm gonna continue around the car, do 2 wipe downs, and then we'll get into actually ceramic coating this. Now that we've got the Polestar all wiped down, ready to actually ceramic coat it, let's talk about this. So this is my detailing cart. This is gonna be all the tools you're gonna wanna have, the towels, applicators, everything. Let's quickly run through it. So we have a 50 ml bottle of Geon Matte here. Their packaging is just absolutely gorgeous. Really love this. Now, one thing I would recommend you do is probably not use this lid and the pour spout. I personally prefer one of these. This is a 50 ml pipette. really helpful. Now, Geon does send an applicator. This is a double-sided applicator here. I personally don't love these. What I've actually switched to is this particular applicator. Now, the really cool thing about this is it has a basically hydrophobic barrier underneath these microfiber sides, and it doesn't saturate with coating, which is very important, because we're not just, you know, putting coating on here and then it getting sucked into the foam and it's completely unusable. The other nice thing is here you have two color coded sides, so I like to flip these halfway through the install. Now I also have over here a little coating stand, because I typically leave the pipette in there. This just helps it from not being knocked over. Nothing worse than having one bottle of coating ready to go on a car and you spill it just because of negligence. So really nice to have one of these. Now, towel setup here, let's talk about that. So Rag Company Pearl towel here, Rag Company with a very thick pile. So this is my initial wipe, second wipe. And then the last part that you're definitely going to want to have, other than gloves, very important to use gloves on here. You don't want coating on your hand. You also don't want your hand oils on the actual paint, is to have lights. So I have a headlamp I wear. This is a Scan Grip headlamp. I have a handheld lamp here. And then when I'm working on the sides, I have two of these guys down here to be able to illuminate, make sure I'm not hitting any high spots. So other than that, these are the tools you're all going to need. You can get away with not using these and just using a handheld light. I just kind of find with coatings, the more light, the better, and make sure you are checking over stuff. So I think now, finally time to get coating the Polestar. We are ready for coating now, and let me quickly talk about how I'm going to do this. So a lot of people say the first time you test out a ceramic coating, do it in an inconspicuous area. I've done so many ceramic coatings in my detailing career that I'm just kind of like, let's go for it. We're doing it already. So I start on the hood, the most visible point. Is this the safest? No. If you're a DIY guy, absolutely recommend maybe opening up a door jamb here, testing it in there, seeing how the cure time is, and then really go from there. I'm pretty confident this is going to be a very simple install. Being that it is a consumer grade product, I'm not thinking this is going to be challenging. One thing I do want to mention, this matte Evo here is very heavily SiO2 based, silicon dioxide. Now, I'm personally not a huge fan of silicon dioxide ceramic coatings. They tend to be very sticky. It depends on the coating, but they tend to be a little bit grabbier than I'd like. I like a very slick ceramic coating immediately when you wipe it off. Now, typically over time, they come off a little tacky. They kind of feel like molasses, if you will, when you wipe them off. I have no idea. I've never used this coating, so we're just gonna go for it. The silicon dioxide also have very different cure times or flash times. Now, quickly touching on flash times, basically that is when you apply it to the point of it flashes, that means it's ready to come off. Now, what I use with gloss vehicles is the Geon Infinite Base Type 1. The flash time is literally 5 to 15 seconds. It is so quick. Other coatings out there are 2 minutes, some are even like 10 minutes. All this comes down to is looking at the coating, seeing what it's doing, and knowing when it's ready to come off. Now, Geon claims this is a one application, so a one layer coating. We're gonna adhere to that. I think doing 2 layers could start causing issues if it builds up too much. So let's go on the safer side. If we do need to coat it, again, maybe we will down the road. But very important there. The other important thing with matte paint, make sure you are over wiping areas. I'll do a demonstration here so you can see exactly what I mean by that, and work in small areas. You do not come at this car and try and do half the hood at once. Even as a professional, that to me, way too much. I'm actually going to split this hood up into multiple sections. So I'm gonna first do a test here. Basically half of this from this body line all the way down. You want to use your body lines, very important when doing coatings. You don't want to start going over everything because then you kind of get lost. Very important to have a process, stick to that and adhere to it. So let's get coating here. So I'm going to crack this bottle open. I've already got my pipette in here. Boom, ready to go. You guys won't be able to see this, but I'm going to put basically 2 lines here on my applicator. And I'm gonna work in what I call a T section. So you'll see it's gonna get very shiny here. And I'm just gonna work this in and see how this reacts here. Definitely smelling the silicon dioxides in the ceramic coatings. Again, not a coating that I really love to work with, but in this case, we don't have a ton of options, and I'm really excited to try this Geon coating here. All right, so that's a nice manageable section. And you just want to kind of look over it and go, okay, I got everything. I'm noticing here, didn't get all the way quite to that body line. Boom, good to go there. So I'm going to just watch this here for a couple seconds. You're going to see this real time as my headlamp is turned on now. I'm just kind of watch and see what this thing does. If it gets a little bit dry in areas, as I can see up here, it looks like it's about ready to come off in that area. Now, I'd rather take it off than leave it on too long. If you leave this on too long, that's when you really start running into issues. So what you can do, grab your initial wipe towel and just come in here, buff that off. Initially noticing this is very, very slick. Okay, very, very happy with that. I do not want a tacky ceramic coating, especially on matte paint. This looks absolutely beautiful here, and it is staying nice and neat in here. Not seeing it flashing quite yet. So this to me seems like you have a long working time, which is very, very helpful on matte paint. That's one of my big issues with something like Geon Mose or Geon Infinite Base Type 1 for users that don't know what they're doing. They flash so quick, you have to work quickly in order to get a good coating here. But let's start wiping this away, and oh my God, this feels incredible. You'll notice all that gloss immediately wiping away, a absolutely beautiful satin finish underneath. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Now I will say, this is making it slightly shinier. Now it's turning it maybe from a little bit more of a dull satin into more of a perfect satin. But wow, you can really see this paint pop. In person, it's way different than you guys are definitely gonna see on camera, but I'm really, really blown away with that. So now, next stage here, going to apply one line to my applicator. Come in exactly where I was. That's why it's important to know exactly where you're at. Again, use that body line. Boom, good to go. You'll notice I wiped a little bit above here on this body line. No problem there, just making sure that we over wipe that area. So you'll notice when I was wiping this, I was coming up into this section, making sure I'm not missing any layers there. So it's kind of feeling like, to me, I can come in here and really apply this a little bit heavier than I normally would a traditional ceramic coating. And it feels completely and absolutely fine. Really loving the slickness I'm feeling here. Now, one of the issues that I see a lot with ceramic coatings is when you do one of these situations, when you split a panel into two. Now, seeing this working time, I may be thinking, okay, as I get used to this coating a little bit, I may start to stretch it and push it a little bit and do maybe the whole center hood. Now, for this demonstration, I'm gonna keep it small, keep it tight, and not overwork myself, because we have one chance with this. If we screw this up, we are basically screwed, if you will. There's no getting this off. So you need to ensure that you're doing okay. While this is curing, I'm gonna come back here with my light. I'm just gonna walk this around, make sure I got all of the surrounding areas. So I wanna look at this door panel here. I wanna look at this small front fender here. I wanna look into this hood area, make sure I'm not leaving spots like this there, making high spots. So this is looking really, really good here. I think we're probably at that point. Again, I could probably leave this on a little bit longer, but I don't want to add shine to it. I really am liking what I'm feeling on this particular coating. Now, I know I'm going to have the question here while I'm working. What do you do about the gloss areas? So the headlights, the surrounds on the windows. Now, what I would really like to do is probably do all of that first and tape this off, basically all the white, the matte paint here, and go in there and ceramic coat it with Geon Infinite Base Type 1. But in the idea of testing, I'm gonna use the matte coating over headlights and gloss areas and see how it does. I'm not thinking it's gonna be an issue. If anything, you're just gonna have slight less longevity than Infinite Base Type 1. This is, of course, a 2-year coating that we're applying now, whereas Infinite Base Type 1 is a 5-year coating. So just checking over this now, I can hardly see any difference here as far as sheen. Really, really liking what I'm seeing. So I'm gonna hammer this down. I'll bring you in a little bit closer for some tighter areas and show you what it looks like up close. Well, just finished up coating the entire painted surface of the Polestar 1. So lots of things I learned on this and can give you some feedback on this coating. First off, the coating is pretty darn easy to apply. As you guys probably saw in the time lapse, I started to try and do some bigger sections. I wanted to do a little testing on my own and see how it did. Working in larger sections for myself, really no issue. Now, a couple of things I do want to make mention of the matte coating specifically. Areas like this on taillights, on trim, reacted very similar to what I've seen in the past with SiO2 coatings. It's really weird, but it is almost sticky and tacky on areas like this, whereas on the matte finish, it's very smooth and very slick. So I was running into not necessarily issues, but just more working of the coating, more checking in those areas to make sure you're getting all of it off. Now, I did do a little bit of research from Geon after I started applying it. I typically don't really read instruction manuals for applying coatings. And the reason being is they're kind of all over the place. They're a general guideline. I like to actually look at what's happening on the paint surface because they give you this guideline and say, okay, whether it's 3 minutes, whether it's a minute, whether it's 5 seconds, whether it's 30 seconds, that all is variable on what the actual temperature is, what the humidity is. So I don't really like to use that. What's interesting is Geon says between 10 to 30 seconds, this is ready to come off. I played a little around with that. I found you can actually have quite a long working time on this, and it's really, really forgiving, if you will, especially on the matte paint, which I'm very surprised about. Almost easier, I would say, sometimes maybe than gloss paint, which is really interesting. Very, very impressed with this coating. Now, the big question, do I think a DIY person can do this at home? Yes, with some caveats. If you have a well-lit space, yes, you can definitely do this. Now, on darker colored cars, it may be slightly more tricky. You may start seeing lines in areas or streaks. So really would shrink down that working size. Make sure you're triple checking everything. I even struggled in areas, especially down the side of the car, with lighting. All of my lighting in here is fantastic, but it's very hard to see in certain areas that you may have missed. So having those scan grip lights, going back through, checking everything, extremely, extremely important. So I'd highly recommend getting scan grip lights if you're gonna do this at home. Now, my personal opinion is if you're even remotely scared about doing this to your own car, leave it to a professional. Again, I do think someone that's well equipped that maybe has done another ceramic coating could probably do it, but I would kind of steer on the side of caution because again, one time and you can completely mess this up. So leave it to the pros. And the funny thing is the pros are not always the best. So I see a lot of shops that do botched ceramic coating jobs that leave high spots everywhere. So you would have like a big shiny spot here. They completely left that. That's not the way we do it here at Clear Detailing. So make sure you know who is actually installing it. Maybe have them show you some examples of their work, not just Instagram photos. Yeah, it's really hard to get through that. But overall, I think this coating was incredible and hope you guys learned a lot on how to coat a matte painted vehicle. I sure did myself. I think the coating technology has gotten a lot better. Very curious to see how this cures over time and how it reacts in the real world. Sitting outside, going to track days or being driven in the snow. Very anxious to see how this lasts. Now, one thing before I let you guys go, I do want to mention curing time. So 12 hours, no water. So make sure you can leave this in your garage, or if you're detail shop, it stays inside out of the rain, anything like that. Geon recommends 14 days really before its first wash with harsh chemicals. Now there are some caveats to that. If you drive your car, get some bug stains on it or whatever, I would rather see you guys use a pH neutral soap at home, hand wash this thing and get the bugs off rather than have issues with the coating down the road. But big issue there is they're worried about using really strong chemicals that could actually harm the coating while it's still in its curing phase. But really happy with this. The sheen is just incredible. It actually looks slightly more glossy here while I'm looking through the camera screen than it is in person. It just has this silky nature to it. So I'm very, very impressed here. But thanks so much for watching another out of spec detailing video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll see you in the next one very, very soon. Bye-bye.